Okay, let's dig into this. We've got $2.4 billion just approved by the IMF for Pakistan back in May 2025. Now, on the surface, maybe just another financial package, but wow, has it stirred things up, especially between India and Pakistan?
Yeah, it really has. The main point of friction is this pretty serious accusation from India. They're basically saying this IMF money um, indirectly helps fund Islamic terrorism aimed at them.
Right. So it's not just about economics anymore, is it? It's pull in geopolitics, security concerns, the whole lot.
Exactly. And we're looking at news reports covering this, but also significantly some sharp commentary from Devyani Rajesh. She's an IM grad. And her posts on X about this really caught fire, reflecting a lot of public feeling.
Mm-hmm. So our goal here for this deep dive is to really unpack all of that. We want to understand the arguments India's, Pakistan's, the IMF's perspective too, and figure out, what are the real tensions here? What could the consequences be, not just economically, but for stability, for counterterrorism efforts?
Well, first off, it's crucial for you to know this isn't Pakistan's first time asking the IMF for help, not by a long shot. This is actually their 25th bailout program since 1950. 25th.
25. That number alone tells a story, doesn't it?
It really does. It points to, maybe some long-standing issues. Are the IMF's fixes working? Or are there deeper structural problems in Pakistan, corruption, maybe military influence on the economy that just aren't being addressed by these cash injections? Like treating a symptom? Maybe.
And this specific package, the $2.4 billion, it's broken down, right? Our sources say $1 billion under the EFF, the Extended Fund Facility.
Correct.
Right.
And another $1.4 billion from the RSF,
Mhm.
the Resilience and Sustainability Facility.
And this is part of a larger $7 billion EFF that started back in July 2024. So with this latest bit, they've now received $2.1 billion total under that current program.
Right. And this constant need for funds, it highlights Pakistan's economic weak spots. You've got persistent high inflation, really low foreign exchange reserves. They were down to about $15.25 billion in April 2025, which isn't much buffer. Plus those chronic balance of payment problems, always needing more foreign currency than they bring in.
The frequency is just, well, remarkable. You mentioned 25 programs overall, but the sources also note funds received in 28 of the last 35 years.
Yeah, and 4 separate programs just in the last 5 years alone. It's almost continuous reliance.
Which leads us straight to India's criticism. Their finance ministry has been pretty vocal, suggesting this cycle means something's wrong. Either the IMF program design isn't quite right for Pakistan, or Pakistan isn't, or maybe can't, follow through on the conditions.
And India connects that to those deeper issues we mentioned, things like corruption, the military's really strong hand in economic matters, and maybe just a lack of consistent deep reform. It feeds into that label you sometimes hear Pakistan as the too big to fail debtor.
Okay, and this is where Devyani Rajesh's comments really resonated, isn't it? Her ex-post that went viral.
Exactly. She basically asked, why does Pakistan keep getting funds, being right next door to India with all these tensions? She drew a comparison, like if a similar crisis happened near, say, Berlin, would the response be aid or would it be sanctions? It's a provocative question.
And the most pointed part, her claim the IMF is essentially subsidizing jihad. Very strong language.
Very strong. And India's official position, gets support from events on the ground. The sources point specifically to that awful Pahalgam attack in Jammu and Kashmir, April 22nd, 2025. 26 people killed. The Resistance Front, which is seen as a front for Lashkar-e-Taiba, claimed responsibility. That really fuels India's concerns.
Absolutely. And India's action at the IMF board meeting speaks volumes, too. They abstained from the vote.
Right, saying there wasn't really a way to vote no effectively, but they made their point clear. Giving this money, in their view, rewards cross-border terrorism.
And this is where that term fungible funds becomes so important to understand. Can you break that down?
Sure. It's a simple but crucial idea. Money is fungible, meaning $1 is the same as any other dollar. So even if the IMF loan is strictly for, say, balancing the budget or specific reforms, it means Pakistan doesn't have to use its own money for those things.
Ah, okay. So it frees up their domestic funds.
Precisely. And those freed up funds could theoretically be used for anything else. Military spending, for instance. Or, as India alleges, funding militant groups.
Right. Like if someone gives you money specifically for rent, you still have your own salary freed up that you might have otherwise spent on rent. Now you can spend it elsewhere.
Exactly that. And concerns are higher because of the military's economic influence, like through that Special Investment Facilitation Council. It suggests that the lines can be blurry.
And Rajesh really hammered this point home. The sources quote her sarcastic comment about IMF funds effectively reimbursing Pakistan for ammunition used against India.
It's a stark way to put it, but it captures the essence of the fungibility fear.
And it's not just a recent fear, is it? The sources bring up some historical context.
Yeah, that's quite concerning. Like the 2001 IMF loan coinciding with Pakistan allegedly sheltering Taliban leaders after 9/11.
And earlier loans, late 80s, early 90s, overlapping with alleged ISI support for operations in Kashmir.
hmm There's even mention of a 2021 CIA report detailing alleged ISI funding for groups like Jamaat-e-Islami. So you see this pattern, or at least these overlaps in time, that worry India.
And even though Pakistan got off the FATF gray list in 2022, that's the financial watchdog list.
Right, the Financial Action Task Force.
The concerns about their counterterrorism financing measures haven't completely vanished. Things like extremist madrasas, borders that aren't fully secure, these are still seen as risks.
Okay, so that's the criticism. Now, what about the IMF itself? What's their justification? They must have one.
They do. Their main argument is about stability. They argue that stabilizing Pakistan's economy is crucial for the whole region. A collapse would be dangerous.
So the classic stability argument. They also point to Pakistan making progress on reforms required under the EFF, things like tax changes. They cited strong implementation in their decision.
And there's a point there, isn't there, that a completely failed state in Pakistan could actually empower extremist groups even more, a power vacuum.
Absolutely. That's the nightmare scenario the IMF and likely Western powers want to avoid. Economic collapse could breed extremism, destabilize a nuclear-armed country. It's a massive risk.
And you mentioned Western powers. Geopolitics plays a role too, presumably. The U.S. has significant voting power in the IMF.
Undoubtedly. The U.S. holds about 16.5% of the voting power. Their stance matters hugely. And while India's concerns apparently resonated with some board members, the sources say procedural issues limited any real pushback against the loan approval.
Which brings us back to Rajesh's criticism again that it feels like business as usual from the IMF.
Yeah, her point about a potential double standard, compared to how a crisis closer to Europe might be handled.
Okay, so how does Pakistan respond to all this?
Well, they reject the accusations flat out. They call India's claims a conspiracy meant to hurt their economy.
Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif actually praised the IMF decision, right? Said it showed confidence in their reforms.
Yes, framing it very positively. Their counter-argument is essentially twofold. First, that IMF money is monitored closely, and there's no hard proof it's being diverted to terrorism.
And second,
Second, the argument we touched on. Denying aid could destabilize Pakistan, a nuclear power, which would be far worse for regional security than the potential risks of the loan. It's the lesser of two evils argument, in a way.
but Rajesh counters that too, doesn't she? Saying that continuing aid without seeing real change on the terrorism front just sets a bad precedent.
Right, she argues it effectively rewards inaction or bad behavior. Her suggestion was more drastic, maybe freezing funds linked to conflict zones, a much harder line.
And this debate isn't just happening at the official level. You mentioned the public reaction.
Oh yeah, huge reaction online, especially on X. Lots of anger, echoing Rajesh's points, people literally tweeting accusations that the IMF is funding terrorism.
Even political figures weighed in, like Omar Abdullah from Jammu and Kashmir, with that comment about the IMF reimbursing Pakistan for attacks.
It shows how raw the issue is. Though, we should add the caution from the sources. These strong reactions might simplify things. Economic collapse could also fuel instability and terrorism in different ways. It's incredibly complex.
Absolutely. So, for you listening, it really makes you think about the role of these big international financial bodies. How much do they need to weigh these indirect security consequences against their economic mandates?
So summing it all up, you've got this fundamental tension. The IMF trying to ensure economic stability in Pakistan, which they see as vital. But that clashes with this very serious concern, mainly from India, but echoed by others, that the money could indirectly make security problems worse.
And India's core point, amplified by voices like Devyani Rajesh, really hinges on that fungibility issue. That economic aid might free up other resources for the military or, allegedly, for terrorist networks.
Meanwhile, Pakistan genuinely needs economic help, and the IMF believes providing it, with conditions, is the best path for regional stability, considering the geopolitical landscape.
Looking forward, what are the potential paths? Our sources hint at a couple of things.
Well, one idea is for the IMF itself to change, maybe build in stronger oversight, or even what India called moral safeguards, considering security impacts more directly in loan decisions.
And for Pakistan.
The pressure is on them to show real, verifiable action against any terrorist safe havens and, perhaps crucially, to reform the military's outsized role in the economy. That's a huge ask, so.
It really is. So it leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty profound question to ponder.
Yeah, when you have global finance, national security, and deep political mistrust all tangled up like this, how should bodies like the IMF act? What's the right balance between economic rescue and moral or security accountability?
And what's the responsibility of member countries in all this? How do they ensure these decisions are made responsibly? Definitely something to think about long after this deep dive ends.